What happens when a daughter lifts the veil on the world's most admired love story, revealing that the truth behind the smiles was far more complicated than anyone dared to imagine? How does one reconcile the image of a perfect father with the reality of a man living two lives? And what does it mean for a legacy built on grace, generosity, and charm to suddenly be questioned by one of its own? These are the questions that linger in the air when Nell Newman, now 63, chooses to speak, not as the daughter of Hollywood royalty, but as a woman finally ready to tell her truth. For decades, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward were the gold standard of Hollywood love. Their story was the one everyone pointed to when the glare of fame destroyed others. They were beautiful, kind, talented, and united. Every red carpet photo, every public appearance radiated effortless affection. Together they seemed untouchable, almost too perfect for the messy world the rest of us live in. But as Nell once said softly, "There are things about my family that were never what they appeared to be." Those words, calm yet haunting, cracked the flawless glass that had surrounded the Newman family for generations. Suddenly, that perfect picture began to blur. Growing up in the Newman household in Westport, Connecticut, was supposed to be a dream. There was comfort, success, and the kind of fame that made strangers smile at the mere mention of their name. Yet inside those walls, silence often carried more weight than laughter. Nell remembers mornings when her father was simply gone. No explanations. No discussions. Just absence. Joanne, her mother, held everything together. On screen she glowed with confidence, but at home her eyes told another story. The exhaustion was real. She managed the children, her husband's career, and the heavy expectations of being half of Hollywood's most revered couple. To outsiders, she was elegance personified. To Nell, she was a woman quietly holding up a world that could easily collapse. For years, Nell believed that silence was just part of celebrity life, something families like hers endured in exchange for success. That belief crumbled one afternoon in 1970 when she stumbled upon something that changed everything. While digging through old scripts, she found a folded document hidden between the pages, a lease for a Manhattan apartment. It was signed under the name of a shell company linked to one of her father's film projects. There was no mention of this apartment in family conversations, no reference in his public life. To a teenage Nell, it was confusing but forgettable. Years later, as rumors began circulating in Hollywood about a mysterious apartment and undisclosed meetings, that discovery took on a darker meaning. Reports surfaced linking Paul Newman to secret gatherings in that same apartment with a tight-knit circle from the film industry. When journalists probed, the family stayed quiet. For Nell, that silence became deafening. She started connecting the dots, fragments of travel records, unspoken moments, strange absences, and names that kept resurfacing. Slowly, she realized her father's world was more layered than anyone knew. This wasn't the story of a scandal splashed across tabloids. It was something far more intimate, a side of her father carefully hidden even from those who loved him most. In old journals and production notes, Nell noticed recurring references to two men, screenwriter Gore Vidal and director George Roy Hill. These weren't just colleagues. Their names appeared again and again, often linked to Paul's private trips to New York, Rome, and Stockholm between 1969 and 1982. Receipts later uncovered from archives showed hotel bookings made under initials rather than full names, and short notes written in her father's unmistakable handwriting, "Dinner with G, same suite." It was cryptic but consistent. When asked about these discoveries, Nell avoided speculation. She chose her words carefully, acknowledging her father's privacy while admitting that his life carried a double rhythm, one public, one private. Then came another discovery that deepened the mystery. Among her mother's old files, Nell found a letter marked "Private," referencing her father's life insurance policy and listing an unfamiliar male name as a beneficiary. No one in the family recognized it. The signature was authentic, the document legal, but its existence was never discussed. It raised more questions than it answered. Nell didn't view this as betrayal. She saw it as another layer in the life of a man who carried secrets not out of malice, but perhaps out of fear of a world that wouldn't understand. But even before secrets and paperwork, there was already pain in the Newman family. Paul's only son, Scott, lived under the unbearable weight of being Paul Newman's child. He tried to carve out his own path. Acting, music, even racing, but every success felt small next to his father's towering shadow. The pressure became suffocating. At just 28, Scott died from a drug overdose, a tragedy that shattered the family's illusion of perfection. For Nell, her brother's quiet confession before his death stayed with her forever. Dad lives two lives, one for them and one for himself. After Scott's passing, silence returned to the family like a ghost. Grief changed everything. Paul threw himself into work and philanthropy. Joanne focused on surviving the unbearable. The family moved forward, but fractures remained beneath the surface. Those cracks widened again after Paul's death in 2008, when the reading of his will exposed another set of shocking turns. His vast estate, worth hundreds of millions, was largely left to his charitable foundation. To the outside world, it was another noble act from a man of conscience. But to his family, it raised unsettling questions. At first, Nell accepted it without hesitation. Her father was always generous. But when a 2006 draft of the will surfaced in 2020, it painted a different story. That earlier version, witnessed by Joanne and two daughters, included family oversight of the foundation and more balanced distribution. The final 2008 version, however, removed their control entirely. The signatures were faint, the witnesses replaced by outsiders, and key clauses mysteriously altered. Court filings later revealed that in his final months, Paul was under heavy medication and surrounded by a small group of advisors who directly benefited from the changes. Nell and her sisters challenged the will in court, not for money, but to protect their father's true intentions. Though the case was dismissed, it reignited doubts about who really held power in Paul Newman's final years. Then came 2025, when Nell appeared on CBS Sunday Morning for what would become one of the most talked-about interviews of the decade. Sitting calmly, she addressed two questions that had haunted her family for decades: the mysterious will and the hidden truths about her father's personal life. Regarding the will, she laid out the timeline with precision, explaining how the final document differed from what her mother had witnessed. She revealed that in 2019, investigative journalists found evidence of secret meetings between Paul and Robert Forrester, the foundation's CEO, during his treatment for cancer. "We're not accusing anyone," Nell said gently, "but the documents suggest my father wasn't fully aware when he signed the final version." But it was her next revelation that silenced the room. For the first time, Nell confirmed her father's long-term romantic relationship with a man. "It's not a scandal," she said softly. "It's simply a truth that was never told." She explained that during her father's lifetime, such a truth could have ended his career, destroyed his reputation, and wounded his family. Keeping it private was not about shame. It was about survival in a time when love had to hide. Evidence supporting her statement had already been quietly preserved. In 2017, Yale University acquired the Newman family archives, which included personal letters and Polaroids authenticated by experts. Among them were correspondences between Paul Newman and Arthur Siegel, a photographer and longtime collaborator who worked with him on numerous projects. One letter dated September 12, 1978, read, "When I'm with you, I feel freer than I ever did on screen." It was a sentence filled with quiet longing, written by a man the world only knew through scripts and movie roles. The letters were not salacious, but tender and introspective, proof of a deep emotional bond that transcended labels. When the public first heard of these letters, reactions were mixed. Some expressed disbelief, others compassion. Many saw in it a reflection of how times have changed, how a truth once feared could now be spoken without destroying someone's legacy. Nell's purpose wasn't to expose or sensationalize, but to humanize. She wanted the world to remember her father as he really was. Brilliant yet flawed, confident yet conflicted. Complex, conflicted, but always trying to live by his own truth, she said at the close of her interview. Her words were calm but carried decades of unspoken weight. For Nell, the story of her parents was never about perfection. It was about endurance. Joanne Woodward, now in her twilight years, remains one of Hollywood's most respected actresses, though her memory has faded with time. Those who know her say that even now, she smiles when Paul's name is mentioned. Their bond, whatever form it took, was real, rooted in respect, loyalty, and shared dreams. Maybe that was their quiet agreement, to love in their own imperfect way and to protect each other from a world too eager to judge. Paul Newman's legacy remains monumental. His charity work changed countless lives through the Newman's own foundation. His acting still defines an era of American cinema. His eyes, those unforgettable blue eyes, captured hearts across generations. Yet beneath all that glamour was a man navigating his own contradictions. Fame gave him power, but it also built walls around his truth. Perhaps that is the price of becoming a legend. You start belonging to everyone else, and in that process, you lose pieces of yourself. When Nell spoke, she didn't destroy her father's image. She completed it. Her revelations didn't tarnish his name. They restored his humanity. For decades, the world saw Paul Newman as flawless. Now, thanks to his daughter's honesty, we see him as something far more relatable. A man searching for authenticity in a life defined by performance. It's easy to idolize the past, to believe in fairy tales of love and success, but even the brightest stars cast shadows. In sharing her story, Nell Newman didn't aim to rewrite history. She wanted to tell it truthfully. Because behind every perfect photograph lies a hidden story, and sometimes the most beautiful truths are the ones that take years to find their way into the light. Paul Newman's legend will always shine, but now, through Nell's words, it shines with deeper color and meaning. The man behind the blue eyes wasn't just a Hollywood icon. He was human, vulnerable, and capable of great love in forms the world wasn't ready to accept. And maybe that's what makes his story timeless. If this story moved you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every story we share reminds us that even legends are human, and sometimes, that's the most powerful truth of all.